We're ready, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the San Rafael City Council meeting of Monday, August 3rd, 2020. We did meet in closed session. I'll ask the city attorney if there's any reportable action.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, and good evening to the council and the community present. There was no reportable action taken in closed session this evening.
Thank you very much. We'll turn to the city manager's report, Jim. And Jim, if I might interrupt, perhaps the city clerk wants to inform those listening what the procedure would be if they wish to participate. Sorry, Jim. Just a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I also take roll?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Bushy.
Present.
Vice Mayor Collin.
Present.
Councilmember Gamblin.
Present.
Councilmember McCullough.
Present.
Mayor Phillips.
Present, all accounted for. And now if any members of the community wish to participate, they do what?
Thank you. Yeah, if you are, first of all, the meeting is being streamed live to YouTube where viewers can provide comments in the live chat, or they're welcome to attend by telephone by calling 669-900-9128. And the meeting ID is 859-7732-5943#. If you're watching on YouTube and you wish to provide comment on topics not related to this evening's agenda, please submit your comments now in the live chat and they'll be read into the record shortly. If you're participating over the telephone and you wish to provide public comments, please press *9 when the mayor opens the public comment period. When it is your time to speak, you'll be notified that you've been unmuted and you will have 2 minutes to speak. If you're submitting comments in the YouTube live chat to be read aloud, please write public comment in caps prior to your message. Introduce yourself and submit your comments. Please note that there is a character limit on YouTube, so you'll need to submit your comments in groups. And if you're planning to speak on city council, to the city council on items not on this evening's agenda, please submit your comments now because that will be coming up soon on the agenda. Additionally, if you've submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, those comments have been forwarded to the city council and have been published to our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Excellent job. And we'll now turn to Jim for your report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a couple announcements and updates tonight, and I'd like to start with an update on the work around the police department's use of force policy. Quick background for anyone who has not gotten the updates at our recent city council meeting or been following our website on this. The mayor has signed President Barack Obama's mayor's pledge to review San Rafael's use of force policing policies, and also requested a review based on the 8 Can't Wait guidelines. So there was a 15-member task force that's been put together and has been meeting over both in June and July. And then staff has also been meeting with the San Rafael Police Association to keep our employees informed and involved. So this process has been going on since June. And the update is that we were expecting to have the culmination of this work for you at tonight's meeting. But then we were just about to complete, as we were completing the agenda item preparation process, we received an update from Lexipol, which is the organization that we contract with to get our base policies and procedures. And they had just made a number of updates to what they consider to be the base language. So we decided to just take a little bit more time and review their recommended language around use of force so that we could make sure that we had the most up-to-date information when we come back to you. So this just means that it's going to be on your next city council meeting. So at your meeting on August 17th, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have the police use of force policy recommendation changes for you at that evening. So again, we'll continue to work to complete those policies and bring them to your next meeting. But we recognize that it's just one step in the overall process. So for those that want to hear more of what's going on and kind of next steps that we have coming, we have a web page on this topic, which is cityofsanrafael.org, which is our base website, and then /racial equity. And you can see what's going on there and also directly add your own comments to that page. Regarding COVID-19 and a coronavirus update, I was trying to do something, a quick update for you tonight, but there's just a lot going on this topic right now. So I'm going to try to just hit highlights for you and just starting really quickly with the numbers. We're at 2,931, almost 3,000 cumulative COVID-19 total positive cases in Marin County, and 54 fatalities as of today. Those are cumulative numbers since the beginning. Right now, we have 24 hospitalizations, 24 people that are in the hospital with COVID positive. And still the best place for data, it's a little bit of a clunky website to try to read out over a video meeting, but most people I think probably have this bookmarked by now. If you're interested in the data, it's coronavirus.marinhhs.org, or Marin Health and Human Services, marinhhs.org/surveillance. And that's what shows the daily count of newly reported positive cases and lots of other information. The daily count has been much higher in July, as you'll see on that page, than any other preceding month. Which is why the primary reason that we remain on the state's watch list, which looks at things like spikes in confirmed cases, hospitalizations, outbreaks in congregate settings, and an increase in community transmissions in the workplace. So I have not been hearing any indications from the county health officer or county EOC that we'll be coming off that watch list anytime soon, based on the fact that we're still seeing high positive cases, higher than what we've seen so far. Our Emergency Operations Center at the City of San Rafael obviously has been running since March on this topic. And right now, kind of the main areas of focus, the first one is the surge of positive cases, particularly in the Canal neighborhood and in skilled nursing facilities and congregate care facilities. Also, acquisition and distribution of supplies, assuring city staff, our own staff, are safe and healthy and have clear guidance in the event of an exposure or illness, and also ongoing community outreach and education. I bring up city staff because, as you know, we have lots of employees like firefighters, paramedics, police officers that are coming into close contact with the community every day, and many more like childcare workers, librarians, inspectors, and others with regular public contact. So we're still providing services, even though City Hall remains closed to walk-in traffic. There's still a lot of services that are going on both here at City Hall and throughout other city buildings. So we're trying to really make sure that our own employees know what to do and what kind of the flow chart is based on a certain occurrence happening, and then what takes place with that employee afterwards. I mentioned the Canal surge team at the last city council meeting, and we've been working with the county and community partners on this approach of putting more effort into that particular neighborhood. And we've been working closely with the Canal Alliance, helping to identify and contact community-based organizations to form a communications network to push out the most recent information and resources and get people the help that they need. There's been a number of different things related to that topic. For example, we have city code enforcement staff that's paired up with county environmental health staff to provide technical assistance to businesses in the canal to ensure that they're supported with the resources they need to meet current guidelines. So, for example, assistance in filling out the site protection plans, or assistance in meeting things if they're not able to meet some of those guidelines through the county health public health order. There were 14 businesses that were visited directly by city and county staff last week for those kind of reasons. And then also, in conjunction with the MCCMC, the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members, Vice Mayor Collin arranged a bulk purchase of face masks, face coverings. That was an order that was most of the communities, cities, and towns in Marin participating. We purchased about 16,000 face masks at significant savings from a large bulk order. And the idea there is to distribute them, make them available to small businesses, to community-based organizations, to vulnerable populations, get these masks out on the streets so that people that don't have them have access to them very quickly and easily. And then we've been doing many different types of education. Just one small example is a series of kind of like A-frame poster board kind of signs that are posted around at parks and paths to promote and remind residents to wear masks when outdoors, and other more permanent signage in high pedestrian areas of the city. We've been working very closely with the testing sites, particularly in the Canal neighborhood, and have been working on the ground to help with on-site coordination and also translation services. I mentioned at the last city council meeting that the next day, the County Board of Supervisors was going to be looking at a contract with a new testing vendor, and that has started and has been operating for, I guess, almost 2 weeks now. That one's located at the Civic Center and has been having great turnaround times. I heard today that the median turnaround time is about 24 hours for tests there. And that one, along with all the others, you can go to the website that I mentioned earlier, coronavirus.marinhhs.org. And if you click on testing information under the resources tab, you see all the different sites, and the ones, most of them require an appointment, but you can go in and quickly get an appointment and sign up for various locations. As you know, the Board of Supervisors recently extended a countywide residential eviction moratorium through the end of September. I just wanted to bring that up because that hadn't quite happened yet, I think, by the last time that we met. And the county's created a series of informational videos, both in English and Spanish, covering the most commonly asked questions. We're also watching, I've noticed a number of bills at the state of California level. The state legislature has regarding evictions and extended rent payback periods and things like that. So we're tracking those things as well during the period of time that we have this eviction moratorium going on. I mentioned briefly last time that the urgency ordinance around enforcement was starting up, and a lot of progress has been made on that over the past couple of weeks of staff working from most of the cities and towns in Marin, working with the County of Marin on a task force that would be looking at enforcement primarily for businesses, but for any violation of the health order. And again, the focus there really is on education and voluntary compliance. The idea from this task force is not to go issue a lot of citations. They're really trying to educate businesses, make sure they know what the rules are, and then get voluntary compliance. Things like I mentioned earlier with like the bulk mask purchase should help in this area as well. You know, if it's an issue of not having enough masks, we can help supply those. So some of the specifics are still being worked out even this week, and kind of the makeup of that task force and where they'll be focusing their efforts. But that's a lot to happen in that area. The last time I mentioned an email address, sipviolation@marincounty.org, which can still be used, sipviolation@marincounty.org. But there's also a contact form, which might be easier at that main county website that I mentioned, to be able to submit any concerns that people have online. A couple other quick things are Dining Under the Lights continues on 4th Street on both Thursdays and Fridays in order to get people back to work and support our local businesses. Best place to find the San Quentin updates are at the San Quentin State Prison Response webpage, which is at the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation site. I was looking at their patient tracker today. It looks like they've had a pretty significant drop in positive cases in the past 30 days, but that's an area that we've been watching closely as well. The Canal neighborhood Wi-Fi you've heard about before, and actually have an item on our agenda later tonight because we wanted to give you a more comprehensive update on all the things going on that particular topic. And there was so much to talk about on that one that we thought we would just create a whole separate agenda item so you can get an update on that community partnership. And again, I've been ending with just the best thing community can do right now is to wear your mask when outside of your home, and also keeping up to date both at the county website I mentioned and also at the cityofsanrafael.org/coronavirus. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to provide this information and update. I'm sorry it's a little long, but there is still so much going on this topic. So thank you.
Well, let me thank you and publicly state my thoughts as you were reciting your report. I'm pleased to move you from the last on the agenda to nearly the beginning, because you do such an outstanding job of bringing key points to the community's attention. You do an excellent job, and thanks so much for doing so. You mentioned the review we're undertaking, and we'll report out to the community on the 17th. That is 2 weeks from now, with regard to the review of police policy and procedures. I think the community is going to be respectful and mindful of those policies, and certainly better informed. So thanks for mentioning that. And then once again, you and the entire staff have done, I think, a superb job with regard to the COVID-19 issue that's before us as a community. And you really stepped up under trying circumstances to help the community through this most difficult period. So wish to thank you for not only your report, but obviously the good work that underlies your summary this evening. So thanks again for doing so.
Thank you, Mayor.
Moved on to the open time for public expression. As most of you know, I'm sure this is the time for you to address us with matters that are on your mind, you wish to bring to our attention, and perhaps some ideas how we might address those issues that are on your mind. This evening, since the items by definition are not on the agenda, we'll not be able to address them, but certainly be appreciative of comments that you bring to us. So I'll ask City Clerk if there are any public comments.
If you are participating by telephone and you wish to provide public comment, please press *9 now. And while I'm waiting for participants to press *9, I'll also request for public comments to be submitted on YouTube. And please note that when you're submitting comments on YouTube, you do need to write public comment prior to your message if you would like it to be read into the record. And I'm going to wait about 15 seconds to give people some time.
Sure.
We have no callers wishing to provide public comments, and I'm seeing no comments being submitted through YouTube.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll now turn to the consent calendar, of which we have 3 items. Approval of the minutes, 9-year, 1/4 cent item that we're going to have on the agenda on November 3rd for the community to address our financial situation. And then finally, the 3rd item, Southern Heights Bridge replacement. First, ask if there are any council members who wish to have any of these items held. Any of the items held. Seeing none, we'll turn to public. Any public comment with regard to these items?
If you are participating by telephone and you wish to provide public comment, please press *9. And if you're participating in YouTube, please go ahead and submit your comments and write public comments prior to your message. I see no comments through YouTube, and none of the callers wish to provide public comment on the consent calendar.
Thank you very much. We'll close public, and return to council for comment or a motion on this item.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Collin.
Aye.
Councilmember Gamblin.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Mayor Phillips.
Aye, matter carries 5-0. We'll now turn to the agenda item 5A, which is wildfire prevention in San Rafael. Chief White, welcome this evening.
Welcome, Mayor. Welcome, Vice Mayor, esteemed council members, City Manager, and our City Clerk. I'd like to thank you for allowing us to present to you this evening regarding the San Rafael Wildfire Prevention and Protective Action Plan and its relationship to the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and all the work that's going on currently right now within the city of San Rafael that I'm really excited and pleased to be able to present this evening. And so with that, I would be remiss if I didn't let you guys know of the major, huge lift of my emergency manager, Quinn Gardner, who's actually joining me in this presentation this evening. She was very instrumental in not only laying the foundation with Chief Gray and others, such as yourself, Mayor, but she really helped out with this informational report and ensuring that we had a nice, concise presentation to provide to you this evening. So without further delay, I'm ready to begin. and we'll just give a brief outline of what we're going to speak to on the presentation right now. Just roughly 20 some odd slides. We're going to speak to the background that led us to this point, the MWPA itself, Wildfire Prevention and Protection Action Plan. In addition, we're going to speak to the current status of those things and how they coexist and relate to one another. And then we'll talk briefly about the path ahead moving forward from this point and from this evening for that matter. We'll move on to the third slide at this point that says, well, can I back up there just for a moment, the previous slide? If you take a look at that slide, just for context, that's Marinwood and San Rafael staff at a most recent incident that they were assigned to just a couple of weeks ago. And so if you get a look at that background there, kind of gives you a sense of how severe it is further north from us, thankfully. But we're looking to prevent conditions such as those here locally. But our staff are getting valuable training and helping others when in need, as we often do when this time of year comes around. We can move on to the next slide. If you look at the Marin County fire risk and you just take a brief look at the map, now I'll point you to the lower left area there. You can see that we have a heavily vegetated area where there's substantial concern and projected flame length. If you look at the red, that outlines the higher of the flame lengths. That flame length is really important because combined with prevailing winds, the radiant heat from that flame and or direct flame contact is what we're concerned about. It creates those burning embers that we know of that can take flight and land miles away from where the original fire is. And so that's one of the concerns we have moving forward about how to mitigate those fuels and ensure that they don't become the flying embers that ultimately impact our structures and our community and create the chaos that we know comes from burning debris and embers such as those. And so with that, our attack is to try to get to that burning debris before it's even burning by covering our ground fuels, covering the laddering fuels that we speak to, and also covering the aerial fuels. But it all starts with the ground fuel approach. And so we'll speak briefly about some of the efforts we take towards shaded fuel breaks and what mannerisms and things that we do to ensure that we're addressing those threats so they don't become the direct flame impact and threat that we know that they can become. It's probably key thing is just to understand how fire spreads. And that's one of the important things of what we do in trying to educate the public about the importance of hardening, clearing vegetation, whether it's, proximal to the property, whether it's proximal to the chimney, whether it's 30 or 100 feet extending out away from all sides of the building. And so these things are really important to put in context. And as we move to the next slide, Quinn is going to provide a little bit of background and information on how we got here.
Thanks, Chief, and good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to join you all virtually this evening. I think hopefully you and the community are pretty familiar with kind of this timeline as we've been kind of constantly engaging everyone. It was back in 2007 where San Rafael first established some specific vegetation standards, our bamboo and our juniper. And then, of course, Mr. Mayor and Council, you'll recall in August of 18 when we had the Be Bold directive and we're basically told to come up with our, perfect plan if money wasn't an object. And so through that process, you saw that first draft in January and then went back with your feedback and then developing with the Wildfire Committee with 15 of our community members, 2 alternates and Mayor Phillips and Councilmember Bushy, and working through that process really for a majority of 2019. The committee met over 7 times with really in-depth meetings and really valuable feedback that I'll touch on here in a second. And then we got to the point of figuring out how we were going to pay for it. And that was when Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and Measure C, and that of course went to the ballot in March of 2020. And since then, we've really kind of seen the light at the end of the tunnel, so to say, now that we have this plan and now we have a funding source for it. And then, of course, throughout all of this, we've still been doing what we could do and maintaining as many existing programs as possible. And so that just kind of captures the how we got here, if you will. And then, of course, the Wildfire Prevention and Protection Action Plan and the MWPA work really closely and are very closely aligned. And when we created our 38-point action plan, we did so without a funding source. And now with the passage of Measure C, we really have that funding avenue. And so we're certainly grateful to our voters and our taxpayers for that. And just have that website there if anybody wants additional information. And Chief White's going to touch a little bit more on what we've already been able to accomplish within the MWPA, and just a little bit of the structure so everyone has that foundation.
Thank you, Quinn. As you look at this next slide, it speaks to the anticipated MWPA funding. There's 3 buckets of funding, as we call them. 60% are in essence the core allocation. That includes wildfire detection, notification, evacuation projects, vegetation management and fire hazard reduction, grants, and public education and outreach. This year, a good portion of that funding is being held in reserve to help carry us through the next fiscal year as we anticipate and wait on the receipt of the tax revenues that come forward later this year. But in the meantime, we were provided with the other 2 pots of funding to work off of to ensure that we get projects that were shovel ready and very visible, but also meaningful, launched as soon as possible. And so the operations committee worked to develop a work plan, and we're working directly off of the figures you see here across 5 zones with 20% for defensible space and home hardening projects, and then local wildfire agency specific prevention and mitigation projects also to the tune of 20%. Those funds, again, the core funds are allocated by zone, not agency. And so if you look at, actually, I think it's in a later or prior map. I'll just speak to it right now. If you look at our zone, actually, it's on this particular slide. If you look at our zone, it's in the purple. That's San Rafael zone. And although the funds aren't just centric to San Rafael, the entire funding allocation is for the 5 zones, including Marin County, Novato, Southern Marin, Central Marin, and San Rafael. And so we've got a pretty substantial portion of this funding that comes to us as one of the larger communities here in the county. And if you look at this current slide that's up right now, it shows the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority structure, if you will, hierarchy, beginning with, as you can see on the photo there, for those of you who cannot, the top of the pyramid is the board of directors, also Mayor Phillips there as well. The middle tier would be the operations and budget committee. That's reflected by myself and or the city manager. The next, and I have to say that Quinn also has been working extensively in that middle tier up until just recently. And so I thank Quinn for all of her efforts, because countywide, I have to say that every one of the fire chiefs have been really impressed and supportive of her efforts, as I have been as well. And so she helped develop the work plan to being what it was, with the template, with the structure of that work plan. And that work plan was actually accepted in June almost effortlessly because of so much work that she put into it. But moving forward, Quinn's going to move into a more technical advisory committee role. We'll also find the Citizens Oversight Committee having a look across the entire spectrum there of what's going on and ensuring that they have the quality feedback and input into the process. You move to the next slide. I call it the WPAP just to shorten it, but our Wildfire Prevention and Protective Action Plan projects that we submitted to the MWPA were roughly just over a dozen projects. And I have to say, it's been very helpful early on. And I'll start with one of the big things that we really had a nice boost from, and it's thanks to the MWPA funding, is that we had the 6 defensible space seasonal inspection staff. They're on board and they already started doing inspection work as of last week. Their first 3 days, they had a couple of 100 inspections that they turned out. And we anticipate, with the oversight of our vegetation management supervision and those 6 inspectors, we anticipate we'll be able to cover all parcels by the end of the year. So this is a huge improvement and change for us, in that we're able to bring on more staff to get more eyes and ensure ultimately more compliance and more education. We also were able to hire the open space rangers. We're working on the neighborhood evacuation maps and evacuation route improvement. Some of our projects directly support roadside clearances. We're looking at canopies and trying to determine what areas require priority treatment. And we're also incorporating the feedback from our suppression staff, who've gone out and done site assessments at our request several weeks ago. And so that information is funneling back to us. We're tracking and making sure that moving forward, we're prioritizing those areas that we believe need attention based on that feedback from not only the inspectors, but the engine and truck company personnel out in the field. Some of the other projects include public education and outreach, specific fuel reduction projects, and that includes private property support, shaded fuel breaks, and D-space around homes, fire road improvements, and goat grazing. And I'll speak to a little bit more about the goat grazing and the approximately 95 acres that was reported to me as of last week, 80 plus that were in San Rafael and another 15 or so that were in Marinwood.
So with the MWPA and with our action plan, we just kind of wanted to remind the council and the community about how much feedback really went into this. And so as we move forward with these MWPA funded projects, and as we start looking at specific items within the action plan, these are just some of the many meetings that we've held. Of course, we've had lots of public comment via the council meeting forum, and of course, council's feedback directly. We've had the online feedback form that's been up for over a year now, and got an email on it yesterday. The neighborhood and organizational meetings, so whether that's HOAs, neighborhood associations, Rotary clubs, those such meetings, open meetings with the Wildfire Advisory Group. So again, they met over 7 times. I think every one of those meetings had at least a few members of the public in attendance providing additional insight. And then in January of 2020, we did 3 more community meetings, kind of going out with what at the time we were kind of defining as our final draft to see what additional feedback was there. At least one of those meetings included an on-site translator so that we were reaching out to our Spanish community as well. So those photos include everything from those community meetings to council to Crystal Park, Lincoln Hill, San Pedro Road, and Rotary meetings as we've kind of moved through our public outreach to really make sure this is a community plan and driven by community interest, as well as the science and the expertise within the fire department. Meeting with the 15 member plus our alternates, we got a lot of really critical feedback really early on. The committee chose to focus on the items that were going to most directly impact residents and have potential costs to residents. And so with that, this is kind of a summary of their feedback. So obviously we spent a lot of time talking about the specific vegetation standards. One of the things the committee reiterated to us, and we continue to do, especially through our partnership with AmeriCorps, is how do we support those that might not be able to support themselves so that everyone can achieve defensible space and be as safe as possible in their home. And that tied very closely along with this kind of positive outlook, if you will, and an emphasis on carrots and not sticks. And that certainly is consistent with the way as a department we've operated and hope to be able to continue to operate, and having the inspectors out there, for example, being able to do one-on-one education is exactly that, and offering those opportunities. And I know the vegetation management plans were a hot topic about a year ago or so. And when we talked about exemption processes, and so there were a lot of questions of, well, what if I don't want to or can, or it's my grandmother's favorite rose bush, or whatever the case may be. And so the committee was big on creating a fair and equitable exemption process that would support folks' ability depending on their risk.
Hey, Quinn, I think we may have lost your connection. If you want to try to cut your video.
We also looked at phased implementation and how we could address this over a period of time and then we have this focus on reducing ignitions, as well as the focus on public education and outreach. And so really want to thank Mayor Phillips and Councilmember Bushy for all their work with the committee, and thank the committee for all their time. They put in a lot of hours, not just in the meetings, but preparing for them, reading through a very dense document. And really do believe the plan is better because of their input. So a big thank you to that group. And so as we kind of transition into providing the overview of the entire plan, we just kind of want to call your attention to really I don't want to only substantial or content changes. We have updated all the timelines. Just with COVID-19, of course, we've been a bit delayed in some of what we wanted to do with this plan, as well as waiting, of course, for election results to be affirmed. So you will see some fairly substantial updates to the timelines, but at the end of the day, the intent has remained consistent in terms of putting that information forward and providing residents with time to do so. The plan does now include some specific references to the MWPA, since that's such a big piece. And of course, item 38 in the plan was that collaboration item to begin with. So 38 now specifically calls out the MWPA. The committee's feedback, really, this positivity is probably the biggest thing, as well as creating exemption processes that are fairly low cost through inspections, is also incorporated into that. Otherwise, this should be fairly consistent with what you saw, in the plan. I guess it was late 19 the last time we were in front, and then what was brought to the community in January of this year. And I do want to just kind of emphasize two critical pieces. One, that this is just the plan that we're asking you to accept in its final form. That's a framework. Any actual ordinance will come back to council for your additional feedback, as well as the community's additional feedback. And that just how big of a deal the MWPA and the funding is, especially in this time of COVID-19 and all the other challenges we're having. We really wouldn't have been able to maintain a lot of programs, let alone expand them, if it weren't for the passage of Measure C. So another really big thank you to our community. And so Chief's going to cover kind of the buckets of items in the plan, but I think we've talked a lot about these, so hopefully most of them remain pretty familiar for you.
Thank you, Quinn. As Quinn indicated, it's going to require, once the plan has been accepted, it's going to require that we have additional city council and community input and action towards moving forward on some of the ordinances that we have identified that will need attention as we work towards becoming a safer community. Multiple items in the plan call for more vegetation standards, for instance, that help limit hazardous fuels and protect property. While adopting the plan does not necessarily create the standards, it really does direct staff to draft those ordinances that we spoke of and bring those back to council at a later date. And that's something we intend to do fairly aggressively to ensure we're getting good traction on these items. The data and research suggests that when something burns literally about 5 or more feet from a structure, that the heat is less than what most materials need to ignite on the exterior of a building. However, if you move just 2 feet in closer, at roughly approximately 3 feet or so, this is not the case. And so this is one of the reasons, for example, that we want to ensure that we're adopting the standard of 5 feet and greater to ensure that we're protecting the homes and we're preventing the potential for ignition. We're really, as I stated, we're going to be aggressive with the timelines. We want things such as this standard in place before next fire season. We want to ensure that we're aligning our efforts and we're getting some of the ordinances done as quickly as possible so that we're just really focused on the core mission, not on some of the foundational items. If we move on to the next slide, we'll see that these risk reduction and fuel management means are a variety of things that we think will be very helpful as we move forward towards addressing numerous items, as you see outlined at the very bottom of the slide, items 4, 5, 8, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 27. In many cases, there are a lot of overlap, but I have to say, for instance, the goat grazing, the home hardening, the actual studies and the focus on fire hazardous plants all make a huge difference in trying to ensure that properties are hardened and or resilient and less prone to fire. And so with that, it's going to be a significant focus and emphasis for us. And we're already making some progress on some of these items. If you talk about the goat grazing, I indicated earlier, we roughly have done well over 80 acres and counting right now in the shaded fuel breaks and the work done by AmeriCorps, which I'll speak to briefly in later slides. And so just a quick glimpse of some of the things that we're already doing and some of those things moving forward that we consider to be of prime importance.
And then as we move through into the public education and community engagement, of course, some of these programs such as our CERT NRGs with COVID-19, we're being a little more hands-off to make sure those vulnerable folks and we're not putting people together, but there's still been interest in things like a tool lending library to help with broom pool days and things like that. We continue to work on creating more Firewise communities. I believe we're up to 11 now in San Rafael. So a lot of progress there. And with the additional defensible space team out and about, we'll continue that. And the outreach and education. And so we have some direct local fundings from MWPA to continue to support that, as well as a great ongoing partnership with Fire Safe Marin and all of their outreach and education efforts. So through these plans and these templates, which will include things like the resilient landscape templates, which I think had come up last year with the committee, as well as some of the council members. We really want to provide those resources to residents to tell them what they can and should be doing, and not just what they might need to get rid of or remove. So that summarizes items 6, 7, 10, 11, 22, 23, and 24. And then I believe as we move on to emergency alerting and evacuation, and this is obviously a really important topic, some really big dollar figures potentially needed to support these projects. But we are still working on getting those maps out and about, and we have an image of that later in the presentation. Working on fuel reduction along the roadsides, and the parking box program that we've talked about, which again will be an ordinance that will come back to council. And there you have an image of what that can look like, as simple as the painted box that tells you where you can park. So we know that we can get an engine around that, not just for a mass wildfire, but for day-to-day response, and making sure we can get in and help people as needed. So we'll work through these items, and you can see down there at the bottom, 25, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, 35, 36, and 37 all kind of fall into this emergency alerting and evacuation, as well as the monitoring and the warning systems, and moving through those various features. And then some of the other items that don't necessarily fit clean in a box, the debris removal, which we are very focused on making sure we're doing that in an environmental way, and reducing our greenhouse emissions, and as well as in some cases, just this past few months, we've been mulching on site. And then when we spread out that mulch, it actually helps hold down some of the regrowth of vegetation. So we kind of create a longer term benefit there. Mentioned the resources for the community, the increased staffing. So the police rangers and the defensible space inspectors fall under that. Number 38, of course, the collaboration and resilient infrastructure, which of course we recently saw that state bill that will be requiring additional backup for cell phone towers. We won't necessarily see it in place this fire season, but certainly moving us in the right long-term direction of having that redundancy in our systems there. So there you see 9, 14, 26, 27, 33, and 38 summarized within that. And then Chief White's going to talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going.
All right, just as a brief summary here, we'll talk, we've spoken about some of the go grazing. I'm just going to tell you briefly some of the locations where we've completed some of those projects. 2 new locations, Terra Linda Hill and Hartselle Park, Idleberry Fire Road and Marinwood, Robert Dollar Drive, Skyview, Santiago Way, Lynn Court and Bret Hart Hill, McNear Fire Road, and Peacock Point. Those comprise the majority of the acres so far that have been grazed. Substantial amount of grazing. Chipper days, up to this point, we've had roughly 13 chipper days. Approximately 200 cubic yards of mostly juniper and some bamboo had been chipped as well. And then just recently on the 27th of July, we had 9 households participate in the chipper day. And one of the things that we're looking at is continue to offer at least 1 bamboo and juniper chipper day per month moving forward. But we're also considering the value of purchasing our own chipper so that we can expand that effort, knowing how important that effort is going to be to a lot of the members in the community. And so that's just a brief highlight on some of those things. We've spoken about the manual fuel reduction from the AmeriCorps team. They've been phenomenal. I'll go into detail about them in just a few minutes. And then the open space rangers, though that's a huge enforcement and eyes on the challenge. We hired 1.5 open space rangers, 1.5 full-time employees, and that's really going to help our efforts with ensuring that we're in a safe community and we're getting to those areas where we understand there may be some potential accidental or intentional ignitions. So moving beyond this slide, expandable defensible space program. This goes and speaks briefly again to the 6 new hires. And we got updated information that there are well over 500 evaluations performed. And if you look at the photos there, you have a chance to see our new inspectors all posing right out in the center of the 1600 Los Gamos location, right there in the center screen. On the far left was when they were going through their orientation and training provided by Quinn, Sean Rule, and Matt Urias. Quinn, was there anyone else that helped with that training?
The battalion chiefs and Engineer McCarthy helped out as well.
Okay, that's great. So great mix of enthusiastic, civic-minded, and experienced individuals, and some less experienced, but all doing well. In fact, I think there was a acknowledgement of 2 of the employees in particular earlier today. I won't go into a lot of detail by that, but apparently the Open Space Ranger, they were speaking with the Open Space Ranger and weren't even aware that that's who they were speaking to, and that individual was thoroughly impressed with the conversation and the work ethic and the disposition that these individuals had. So I credit that to Quinn and David Catalanoto and others who helped select the staff, and then we interviewed them and obviously chose the best of the best here out of the 30 some odd candidates. And so it's really helpful. Partnership with AmeriCorps. Quinn, being a former AmeriCorps individual herself, knows the value of AmeriCorps. I had no knowledge of AmeriCorps prior to coming to San Rafael, and I see clearly why they're so well embraced here. For at least the past year and a half or so, going back to April of 2019, we've hosted two of the teams, and the third, I guess, was not able to come due to COVID concerns. But the 2 teams that have shown up have been really huge. We had one that was specifically with AmeriCorps that had training from St. Louis, and they were chainsaw crews and came in and really just did major work for us. And so I've got some stats and details about that. I'll kind of try to skim through that as quickly as I can. But I think there's some photos that show the crew there. Yeah, there's some of the crew and some of the clearance and work that they're performing. Again, groups of motivated and civic-minded individuals who really come in with an open mind and a willingness to work hard and do the best they can to draw down risk in our communities. And so it's really encouraging. The great thing is they're also helping directly some of the homeowners with maybe some physical challenges or fiscal challenges as well. So they're coming in and working directly with the homeowners and providing them with support that they otherwise might not receive. And so that's really commendable work that they're doing. And so they are a fee-for-service, but it's a very competitive fee-for-service. And I don't think you can do much better than what you get for the amount of work they put in, for the time and the dedication that they have. And so we're hoping that they come back sometime in early or maybe mid to late October to continue to do some of the excellent work that they've been doing for the past 2 months. They just ended their operation, if I'm not mistaken, over the weekend. So moving on to the next slide. Here's some more photo examples of the locations where they've been at work. Some of the, how should we say, fuel removal before we even get to the fire road clearances, kind of a pre-chipping effort on their behalf. Those roads, I wish we had some of the before and after photos so you could really see specifically the changes in the amount of work that they've done and the transformation that their work has led to. But that being said, I've got a list of about maybe a dozen or more locations. I'm going to run those off real quickly in case some of them are familiar to you. And again, they'll be moving into other areas when they return in mid to late October. So their project sites included, but were not limited to, Acacia Grove and Montmorin behind Corte Miguel in Salvador Way. I believe that's in Marinwood. Alongside Coleman Drive in San Rafael, Aquinas Fire Road toward the Bay Hills Fire Road, Balboa Road, behind Graceland Drive in San Rafael, Chula Vista Fire Road, Elementary School Fire Road, Ellen Drive behind Elvia Drive, and Queens Fire Road, or excuse me, Queenstone Fire Road in Marinwood, Gersel Park Fire Road in D Street, Gold Hill Road, Hartsell Park in Terra Linda, Hillside Drive, McNear Fire Road, Mount Maria, Moores Hill Open Space Area, Robert Dollar Fire Road, an area behind Elks Lodge, San Rafael Community Center, and looks like Tamal Vista Drive. And so you get a sense of just how much work they do and the variety of areas that they're drawing down risk for our community. And I just can't say enough about them and how our relationship with them. I hope to be able to continue that for many years to come. So the path ahead. Well, it's kind of a summary of some of our next steps. We're going to look to continue with the support of our existing and some of the new staff. We're going to continue our ongoing fuel reduction efforts. The photo there that you're looking at is some of our staff working with the Department of Public Works to remove trees that were blocking a fire road. And so these, again, are some of the behind-the-scenes efforts that we're not always privy to or aware of, but some of our vegetation management inspectors are getting some of these photographs and really being able to tell the story. And so we thank them for doing this as well. Future work includes the parking boxes. I know Quinn has really been very instrumental in trying to ensure that we get parking boxes in some of the key locations and the very difficult areas to navigate within the hillsides. Improved evacuation routes, local evacuation maps, as she indicated earlier. Those are things we're working on sooner than later. Longer term and maybe a bit more expensive projects include the improved monitoring and alerts and some of the detection systems that we're looking at that may involve cameras and other heat sensing devices that PG&E and others are deploying already, that we're looking to multiply those numbers in our community so that more overlap and or more coverage is provided through those projects. And then last but not least, certainly we want to provide some financial assistance to those with lower incomes who may be challenged financially to complete certain projects. Neighborhood evacuation maps. This is goes without saying. When you see what happened in Paradise and other communities who are already prepared, had been exercising, but maybe didn't exercise a mass evacuation, only a zoned evacuation. It's going to be important for people to know multiple ways in and out of their neighborhoods. And I always tell everyone, also know some safe refuge areas in case there's some reason why you can't make your way out. Try to identify one or two safe refuge areas where you're familiar and and you can go into those locations and hold over safely if you can't get out safely. And so these are going to be huge moving forward. I think this is something you're going to see a lot of emphasis on. And I think ultimately, as I stated, primary and secondary routes, virtual community meetings will be set up with neighborhoods to try to gather their feedback on some of the neighborhood drafts that are currently in print. And then other individuals within Marin County, other agencies rather, are already working with vendors. And so to ensure that we have consistency across zones and across the county, we're probably going to look to replicate the efforts of some of those other vendors by using those same vendors and ensuring that we're not sending a different product out across zones. One of the main goals of the MWPA was to make sure we were aligning our efforts across and throughout the county. And so I think in consideration of that, it's going to be important for us to use those same individuals. And then last but not least, the summary slide is why we're really here tonight. We are here to ask that the council adopt the final San Rafael Wildfire Prevention and Protection Action Plan as the framework that it exists as for wildfire risk reduction throughout San Rafael. We recognize that the MWPA will serve as primary funding source for implementing the WPAP, but this effort has been ongoing for quite some time, and we think the time is now to ensure that we're moving forward with the acceptance of the plan and ensuring that we move forward with those ordinances and other items within the plan. And the timing is critical considering that we're in a pandemic, and as things progress, we want to ensure that we're moving things forward as best we can despite the pandemic. But we don't want to continue to see some unforeseen or unintended consequences or challenges behind delaying the implementation of the plan. So with that, we respectfully ask that you accept the resolution and you accept the plan as the final draft, or excuse me, as the final plan for the San Rafael Wildfire Prevention Protection Action Plan.
Screen hasn't changed, but I do have a comment. I think I'll wait a moment. There we go. Well, first, Chief, I want to thank you for your enthusiasm for the project. and your excellent summary of what has transpired thus far. And I must say, I love it when a plan comes together, and I think you've exemplified that. So I do want to thank you. And in the process, of course, Councilmember Bushy was instrumental in seeing us forward, as was the Committee of 15, Community Committee of 15. They were great, and I think added a lot, and I appreciate Quinn recognizing as such. Having said that, Quinn was a star. She was just outstanding. I can't pat her on the back, which I'd love to do, because truth be known, Quinn really stepped up and did an excellent professional job with great enthusiasm and collaborative effort by everyone. So Quinn, I think Maribeth agrees with his nod of the head. Shake, you were absolutely terrific. And like I said, I'm pleased the plan comes together on behalf of the community. It's been a real effort to get us to this point, but it's in the right place. It's moving forward. I think it's going to make a real difference for our community. So I do want to appreciate everybody that's been directly involved, and certainly the council for its involvement reviewing the plan and presumably acting upon it this evening. So hats off to everybody involved. I couldn't express my appreciation more, I must say. So thank you. Having said that, comments with regard to the presentation of the plan, and then we'll ask the community for further comment. Anyone? Yes, Vice Mayor Collins.
Yeah. Thank you. And I echo what the mayor said. I mean, what a team we have at our fire department, and especially in Quinn. So thank you for all the work that you've done to reach out to the community to make sure we have a plan that reflects what we want to do in terms of fire preparedness and the community values. I just had a couple questions and it's actually, it just turns out it's number one. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of them. But in number one, the very first one, there's a reference to different species, specimens, maybe that's the word, of plants. So I was curious why in that one, some were named and highlighted, where later on in number 3, it says refer to this list. And personally, I like the idea of referring to this list, because that way, people in the list that refers to in number 3 is Fire Safe Marin, as well as the National Fire Protection Association. And I just think the more that we can collaborate and use the resources and information that is out there. So that, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I was hopeful that we could be consistent throughout the document.
Chief, do you want me to take that, or?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. So if you already are on top of it, go ahead.
Sure. So, thanks, Vice Mayor. I think with number 1, that was really adding to our standing bamboo and juniper, and especially Italian cypress as well as acacia are just recognized as such high risk that we're really looking at eliminating them within 30 feet of any structure would most likely be the ordinance that we would bring forth to you. Whereas in number 3, that's really about creating standards within that immediate zone, which has a lot more variation based on topography, structure, siding, things like that. And so while we don't want those 4 species anywhere within those 5 feet, there's a lot other flexibility within that 5 feet. And so that's why there's that discrepancy, if you will, between why in 1 we're calling out 4 specific species that we really just do not want to see because of what we've seen them do in communities and the way they propagate fire. Whereas number 3 is really going to try to reference lists and really give people more of this is what you can and should have near your structure. But again, as Chief White mentioned, there's just so much research that's saying that 0 to 5 feet is just so essential. But we also heard from the community loud and clear that no vegetation is not an option, right? People want some vegetation within that 0 to 5. And so that's why the list becomes more vast there, where we're encouraging people to use these species, succulents, things like that, intermixed with gravel and other things that aren't going to propagate fire and spread fire the same way.
No, that makes sense. And I understand about bamboo and juniper. I guess I was, and the cypress, I guess I was a little surprised to see the acacia, because there are some specimens of acacia that aren't as flammable. So I guess I'm always just worried when we don't have any flexibility in there. And again, not being a botanist, but being, somewhat of a gardener, that it was directed at that. So maybe when it comes back through, the more specific we can be, even if it's an attachment, and say all these acacia lists, I think that would be helpful. And thank you for that explanation. That makes a lot of sense between 1 and 3. And I do appreciate you taking the input of the community because, yeah, the no landscape, brick and concrete around the house, while it's super safe, was going to be a hard pill for our community to swallow. And then I just had, let me see, my one other question. It was on number 17, and it talked about remodels triggering standards that are right now within the WUI, but actually triggering them for outside the WUI. And I was a little confused because it says it's a 50% trigger. So a remodel of 50% or a full new build. So this is anywhere in San Rafael because we're outside the WUI, but yet the example given was talking about if you had a broken window, you need to put in a fire safe window. Well, that to me isn't a 50% trigger. So I was there seemed a little bit of a disconnect on that one.
Sure. And I appreciate that feedback as well. And I think that's certainly clarity that would come through in this specific ordinance. So as you know, we have some existing ordinances on the books that are triggered by substantial remodels. And so we want to look at expanding that outside the WUI. And then in addition, the way I like to summarize 17 is a point kind of in our fire risk as a county that we should have no material coming into Marin that is not fire rated. So while it would be a very slow process, the idea that if you're going to have to replace one window, at least that window might as well be fire rated. Now, if you were doing a big remodel project, that would trigger additional things that are already written into our ordinances that help with fire prevention, like sprinklers and things like that.
Right.
I hear that, and I appreciate that call out. And those combining what ultimately probably would look like 2 different ordinances when it came forward, but it's combined as 17 because it's getting at material and our ability to reduce fire risk by encouraging or requiring more fire-resistant building material.
No, and that's a great message that people start to think about as they're working on their properties. And then the last are just a couple comments. Number 7, I love the emphasis on the Firewise community. I'm actually on the Firewise community board for my own neighborhood. When this was put on our plan over a year and a half, 2 years ago, I thought, you know what? I want to see what we're asking our neighbors to do. And it's been very eye-opening. It's, I don't want to say it's a lot of work, so I don't want to scare people off, but it actually really, you really need that neighborhood participation. And so thanks to John Hansen, who oversees Fire Safe Marin, and of course, Sean Rule, who's been great with the San Rafael Fire Department. We've already done our walk-around assessment. And you really start to look at things, I think, with a more educated eye by having the professionals there and really starting to see what has to happen in the neighborhood. One of my neighborhoods, there's this huge bamboo grove that I don't know if it's on city property. It was one of the areas that we happened to walk by in our assessment. So when I saw that in the document, as we ask our homeowners to make remove these plants, there are going to be places that we're going to need to do it as well. So that it was really eye-opening. I'd actually probably walked by it hundreds of times and never even noticed. So very insightful. And then just the last 2 comments on number 19. I think it's great that we're targeting our resources. We're just being very thoughtful about that. And Chief Wright talked about this at the very end, which was the whole evacuation planning. As we go out and talk to the community, in fact, my own community in terms of the Firewise procedure, we haven't done a lot of evacuation planning. I mean, we, the community, not you, the fire department, you have, but, Mill Valley has drills on it and we haven't. And so I think our community is very interested in about areas of refuge and all of that. And they're ready for the information. And we just, we're getting there. Like there's so much we want to do. We want to get there, but I was really happy to see that as one of the priorities. So again, in closing, just a phenomenal document, and it won't just sit on the shelf. That's what we all know about. We have the funding, thanks to our voters, that we'll be able to implement these really crucial steps. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Wait, you're muted.
Keep going back and forth. Sorry. Earlier, I failed to mention, I intended to, but I failed to mention Chief Ray, who certainly was the early participant in this process and very open. And the direction was pretty simple. Tell us exactly what we have to do to better prepare the community to prevent a fire. But if there is such an event, how do we best deal with that? And Chief Ray was wonderful in dealing with that as well. So I want to thank you, Chief. Other comments before we go to the public? Councilmember McCullough.
Well, first of all, I want to echo the
the thanks to Quinn Gardner and Chief White very much. That Chief White, not Chief Gray. Chief White very much for the hard work that's gone into this. I think the document's fantastic. I just had a couple questions. One, it was alluded to by Vice Mayor Collin. Can you talk just a little bit about where we are or where other jurisdictions are in relation to us in terms of implementing their own WPAP and both developing and then implementing, that is, moving forward on the steps within their wildfire protection and action plans?
Well, I can tell you, I don't know about the other counties and how far they are, or the other agencies within the county and how far they are to implementing different plans that aren't community wildfire protection plans, as an example. But I can say that even in the county where I came from, there's still some ongoing efforts and challenges with trying to get plans in place that are accepted and specific enough, have enough specificity and or range of options to be able to mitigate the concerns that emanate within those communities. And so it's really important that we're in this position here right now with all the work that's been done to this plan. Although it's a smaller plan, I think it's a pointed and direct and comprehensive plan. So it doesn't have a lot of fluff, it doesn't have a lot of waste, and being able to get right in and get to the core issues and then devise solutions to address those things that we know are priorities for the community is huge. And so I can certainly say that effort that's gone on here in San Rafael it's a huge effort. I don't know that many other communities have replicated that. I know some are in the process of trying to do it now, but given the pandemic, I don't know how much traction they've received either, because their resources may be a bit scarcer, their staffing may be a bit leaner now. So it's one of the reasons why I really feel like now is a great time to keep pushing forward with our own plan. But I'd have to do a little more research to understand what's going on regionally right now with wildfire prevention and protection action plans that the other communities may have.
Well, and Chief White, thank you for that explanation. I should have been more specific. I'm particularly concerned with the other jurisdictions within the MWPA, and to the extent that they are staying with us or staying ahead of us, that's terrific. If jurisdictions, particularly those that are adjacent to us, are lagging behind, then it's a cause for concern, because as we've all been told over the years, fire knows no boundaries, and we want to make sure that just as we're being responsible within our neighborhoods, that our neighboring jurisdictions are as well. And if there's anything we can do to help them, providing technical assistance and the like, I'm trusting that we're doing that.
And Councilmember, if I can add, in your packet, there is a link to the work plan, and I know it is quite the work plan. And hopefully before the meeting, I'll try to find the few pages, but there is a few pages of summary document in there that is at least what the different jurisdictions are intending to use MWPA funding for in the next 6 months. So that is a little bit of an indication there.
Terrific.
And I'll just quickly add that there is a board of 17, and soon I'll try to address your question with input from the other 17. To be honest with you, I think we're, without exaggerating, a mile ahead of everybody on this thing. We have been working on it for a while, again, thanks to Quinn. That was the intent. And you may recall, we said we were going to do this either stand alone or if the county stepped up and combined efforts, which was the case, so much the better. But we are going to make sure that our 38-point plan is incorporated in the broader plan and addressed. That's the deal. And so we'll make certain of that.
Great.
Yeah, we're in pretty good stead in that regard.
One other minor question.
Sure, of course.
If I could ask, I'm sorry, and I'll address myself, Quinn, to you. The language in the plan reads to me that if, and this is getting quite granular, if a homeowner is directed to remove vegetation for whatever the reason is, because it's a fire hazard, and it's because it's within a certain distance of a structure, I presume that means that whether it's the residence structure or whether it's the resident's neighbor's structure, that tree still has to be removed. Have you, in the public sessions, have you encountered any feedback on that issue or opposition or concerns?
Yes, we hear quite often about the neighbor's tree, if you will. But we are, and our defensible space inspectors have actually gotten this question a lot, that, my neighbor's tree is overhanging near my chimney, whose responsibility is it? And it is the owner of the tree. But we can work on certainly clarifying some of that, and the assistance would be available, in either case, quite honestly. I mean, the goal is to get the community safe, so we're not going to split hairs about that. And if we can help remove that, we will, through the grant program, or with AmeriCorps when we have them back in October.
Great. Thank you.
It's just to save you, because it's a 200-page document. Page 51 of the link that's in your staff report for the MWPA board packet is where you can kind of catch a quick summary of what other jurisdictions are doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. John, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, and just thanks again for the report. It was very extensive, and we very much appreciate you putting that together for us. My question kind of follows up on that last point you made, Quint, regarding the other jurisdictions. One of the large, and if I missed this in the report, I apologize. One of the largest participants, or maybe lack thereof, in our area is the state of California with the state park. How are they doing on their end, integrating with what we're doing? Because as Andrew pointed out, we could do a really great job, but when you've got kind of camp right in the middle of all of San Rafael, if they're not doing their job, it kind of defeats the first point.
Yeah, Councilmember, that's a great point. We have a really great working relationship with the Friends of China Camp, which is the volunteer organization that manages the park. It is an orphan state park, and so they don't necessarily have direct land management that's occurring. But our hope is that, especially because this is countywide funding, that we're going to be able to do some more projects. And we have many fire roads that run through the park that as a city we do maintain. So that helps us create some buffer there. One of our biggest ongoing concerns, specifically as it relates to China Camp, is working with them around their campfire regulations. And so trying to make sure we're minimizing those potential ignition risks there. But we'll continue to work with them, and we'll have to engage at the state level as well on some of these projects.
Quinn, I have just a question I know you'll have an answer to that might help the community reach out to our department. That is, describe this briefly, if you would, the process homeowners might go through if they wish to have an assessment of their home and their property, so that our fire department folks can come out and help them assess that. I don't want to use the word inspector. We're not using inspector, but rather consultant or an advisor, if you will, to come out and help them, get a better sense from a professional as to where they stand, what they might do to better protect themselves and their neighbors.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think the easiest way is to call our WUI Wildland Urban Interface hotline, which is 415-721-2875. And that way one of our staff now can give them a call back, just because we actually have a good amount of staff out there doing the work. So we want to make sure we can get the folks quickest. For the 6 new hires, we are working through, as Chief White mentioned, neighborhood by neighborhood with the WUI parcels. And then our lead inspectors are going to be responding to the kind of requests, complaints, and follow-up activity, so that we can hopefully hit everybody within that wildland urban interface this year, and get them the information they want. And we are seeing about and maybe this is one slight silver lining of the pandemic, is we're getting about a 40 to 50% answer rate when we're knocking on doors and taking our 6 feet back and seeing if people want to come out and walk the property with us. So the opportunity to engage with, we said 700 inspections, that's 350 residents that we've been able in 7 days to have direct one-on-one educational opportunities with. So really, really grateful to have those staff on board. And like Chief White mentioned, I think we're off to a great start there. So the WUI hotline, 721-2875 is the best way.
Excellent. And of course, there's no charge for that. And the advisor that comes out is not going to list you a ticket for having, let's say, a violation, if you will, once we get our ordinances in place. And help with a timeline, because we know it's not going to be done necessarily within 6 months or a year. A timeline plan, if you will, that will help assist over a reasonable period of time. I think that's, as I understand, as I recall, that's the plan, right?
Yeah, we look forward to those opportunities and really to work with property owners. And as long as we're seeing progress and seeing good efforts, that's our goal. Even if all people can do is fill up their green card every week, that can make a huge difference over the course of a year or a season. So really appreciate that effort, and thanks for clarifying that, Mayor.
Yeah, and good point, and appreciate the additional input. I see no additional comments, so we'll go to public at this point in time. Lindsay, any public comment?
If you are participating by telephone and you wish to provide public comment, please press star 9 now. And while I'm waiting for participants to press star 9, I will also request that public comments be submitted through YouTube. Just a reminder that when you are submitting comments through YouTube, please write public comment prior to your message, introduce yourself, and then I will read them into the record. We do have 2 callers with hands raised, so I will go ahead and unmute them.
Hi, good evening. This is Bill Carney with Sustainable San Rafael. It's good to see you all. I just wanted to quickly note and appreciate the real progress being made in Marin, both in countering the threat of this major impact of climate change in the form of wildfires, and very importantly, in doing so in ways that also help reduce the increase of climate change itself, which of course is driving these intensifying wildfires. So a couple of things in particular. First, the newly established Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority has joined with a number of climate and environmental groups, organizations, to form an ecologically sound practices partnership to help guide the MWPA activities and its, in particular, its educational outreach to the public. So there'll be more coming from that on that front. And secondly, the countywide Drawdown Marin initiative has endorsed a biomass recovery effort, working in concert with the green resource haulers and processors in the county to identify climate responsible ways to manage the increasing amounts of organic material that's being generated, both by wildfire prevention activities and also by curbside collection programs. So that's going to be a real addition to a very increasingly present challenge that we all have. So, we're glad to see the involvement of a number of San Rafael staff members in both those efforts, and we encourage that the results be integrated on an ongoing basis so that we benefit as a city from these best practices in the city's wildlife prevention and protection program. And then finally, I also wanted to mention, just to urge that as that in the hiring of vegetation management staff, that we pay attention to locally sourcing those to the extent possible to provide some economic support to San Rafael's most vulnerable residents, and I'm thinking of the Canal in particular, during these very difficult times. So thank you for all your work.
Good point, Phil. Thanks for the comments. Anyone else or next person?
Hi, council members and mayor. This is Kate Powers. I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to congratulate San Rafael on the plan. I think Be Bold Directive paid off, Mayor Phillips. It's an action-oriented plan, and I think that it set the bar for future planning efforts. I like that it has not only what this means, but also the rationale behind it. And I also appreciate the inclusion of what concerns with each action there might be. I think it's a really publicly accessible document. I think one of the most important actions is number 38, and working with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and their collaboration, as Bill said, with the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership. I'm looking forward to learning how to improve my home landscape by improving the soil health, planting natives that support biodiversity of local insects and birds, while also choosing plants that are going to be fire-wise and water-wise, fire-safe and water-wise. I think the debris removal and composting in an environmentally sensitive way, like Quinn mentioned and also Bill mentioned, is really important in not adding more carbon to the atmosphere. I also think it would be really beneficial for the city in managing its open space to combine the vegetation management for wildfire prevention with removing invasive species. There could be some multi-benefits in land managing both for wildfire and for invasives at the same time. And the last thing I just wanted to say is that I have attended several fire prevention presentations, and by far and away, what I took away was that home hardening is the best tool for fire prevention in protecting a structure. And if you do nothing else, that if you replace your vent screens with screens that are 1/8 inch or less, that you've taken a big step in just preventing ash and things getting into your structure, because your wood frame and everything will burn a lot hotter often than the vegetation. At least that's what I heard from the presentations I went to. Thank you.
So thanks, Kate. Good points. We appreciate each of them. Next person.
I'll just state once again, if you are wishing to provide public comment and you're on the telephone, you will need to press *9. I'm seeing no comments through YouTube, and I'm seeing no additional hands raised. So that will conclude public comment.
Thank you so much for public comment. We'll close public and return to council members for follow-up comments or a motion with regard to this report. Do I hear a motion with regard to the acceptance of the report?
I'll be happy.
I'm ready to make that motion.
Thank you, co-chair.
Could I just add something? And I think, Quinn, you were very clear that things will be coming back as ordinances. So this is very much for the plan. I know that when you get into the details, in some places the plan was specific, but in other places it was broad. So this is part of the ongoing conversation that we'll have with our community about the specifics.
Oh, yeah, that's the next step, and it's always been planned to be so. Maribeth, I think we're going to offer a motion.
Okay, I move that we accept the report and adopt the resolution on wildfire prevention in San Rafael.
Thank you, and again, thanks for your holding a hand on that deal. I think it has been seconded by Vice Mayor Collin.
I'll second. Thanks, team.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Collin.
Aye.
Councilmember Gamblin.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Mayor Phillips.
Aye, the matter carries 5-0, and thanks again for everybody involved, particularly you, Quinn. You were terrific, absolutely terrific. So thanks.
Thank you all. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well deserved. Let's move on to the Canal Wi-Fi network, item 5B. Rebecca, good evening.
Hello. Hi, everyone. How are you doing?
Good. We'll turn it over to you.
Good. Excellent. So I have no slides tonight, but we have a report to supplement the staff report. So I'm here tonight to provide you with a status report on our efforts to build a Wi-Fi network in the Canal neighborhood. As you know from my initial report in May, the pandemic really exacerbated the digital equity issues in our community. Since March, many efforts have been made by the schools, the city, the county, and many nonprofits to focus on increasing internet access. We've taken a multi-pronged approach to this through the distribution of laptops and personal hotspots, the promotion of low-cost internet programs, boosting Wi-Fi signals on public properties like community centers, libraries, and schools, and building a free Wi-Fi network in the area of highest concentrated need in the Canal neighborhood. So tonight, I'm going to focus my update on the Wi-Fi network efforts that have been underway. And I'm joined by Javier Trujillo from the County of Marin. He's their Chief Assistant Director of Information Services and Technology. And none of this would be possible without him, and also the incredible support that the county has provided to make this happen. The collaboration behind these efforts is amazing, and working with the county and our partners at San Rafael City Schools, Canal Alliance, and others, it's really been a joy and an honor. It's my favorite part of my job right now. I'm also enormously grateful to Supervisor Rodoni. He really has raised the funds to make this happen, and Javier will go into a little bit more detail on those in a minute. So in May, when I last gave you a report on this, we very ambitiously thought we could get this network up and running by July. We tried really hard, but unfortunately we did hit a few roadblocks. So it's not quite up yet, but it is currently being installed. Javier will again go into more detail about the phases of that. And we do hope to have it operational by the time school starts. Before I kick it over to Javier for some more details on the project, I do also want to say a few more thank yous just to illustrate what a collaborative project this has been. I want to say major thanks to Dave Cooper, the CEO of Marin IT, and Lionel Floret, a resident of Greenbrae and principal at Cisco, who have volunteered just hours and hours and hours and hours of their time. They helped design the network. And also, thank you to DC Electric. They are installing the equipment for free. So it's just been incredibly wonderful collaboration to work on. And so I'm going to turn it over to Javier, and he is going to provide a little bit more details on how the project has evolved since I last reported to you in May. And then I will circle back with a few more remarks.
Javier, welcome.
Thank
for joining
you.
us.
Good evening, Mayor Phillips, council members. Appreciate the opportunity to come share with you tonight and reiterate the gratefulness for the partnership that we have with the city of San Rafael. So our plan is to deliver a free public use Wi-Fi network, and we're doing that in phases within the Canal neighborhood. The phases are rolling out to match our carrier's ability to deliver circuits as quickly as possible. So as we identified the different sections of the neighborhood, we know we could deliver circuits easier in some sections than others. And so and combine that with the population of students in different areas. That's how we developed our phasing. The initial phase is to pick, if you can think about the Pickleweed Library to Bahia Vista Elementary School, and maybe down Canal Street to Sonoma, and that quadrant, that's kind of our first phase. There's quite a few students in there, there's quite a few residents, and we have some existing network resources that will allow us to ramp up very quickly. We knew that the fiber existed. Phase 2 continues down Canal Street more towards Medway. And phase 3 is more central in the neighborhood between Sonoma and Belvedere, from Kerner to Canal. Not quite all the way to Canal, but you can kind of think of that central area. It's a very dense area as well. And those are the first 3 that we're really targeting with intentionality early on. We hope to get those all up very soon. These phases, the first 3 phases, should provide coverage for around approximately 1,000 students who live in those quadrants. And the entire project has a potential to provide internet access for up to 10,000 total residents as far as coverage. And about 3,000 of that is kind of the students. And those are the numbers that we have from information from past censuses and some of our partners. One of our partnerships that is key to this project is with the San Rafael City Schools, specifically represented by CTO Sarah Ashton. They are providing a one-to-one Chromebook initiative that is key to the success of this project, because network's one thing, but you have to have devices. And with that one-to-one, they're providing us key information on the hardware, so we can the network can recognize those devices day one when they come on the network and just work. So we're very grateful for that, and we continue to have conversations with the San Rafael City Schools. We're at the very early stages of spending. Again, as Rebecca mentioned, Supervisor Rodoni was very active and very successful in helping raise $335,000 total, as you'll see in the report. We've spent just about $100,000 of that, and that was to acquire hardware and software necessary to enable the network. We have yet to receive a single bill from a carrier, but we estimate it once we're fully live, roughly, depending on choices we make, about $4,000 a month to maintain that network with good performance. So with the funding we have, the generous funding that we've received, we will continue to identify locations where we can continue to invest and enhance provide the best possible experience. And we will do that informed by data. The data that we're really looking at are usage and adoption. And there's that we can gather from our URL filter, from the wireless and equipment itself can report back to us where the people are most using it, and other areas where there's a lack of coverage spots, and so we'll use that to expand. As part of our data, we're going to be we want to provide some transparency as well. So we're talking about the canal-wifi.com is a website that we'll be providing as a landing page that is going to be used as a primary vehicle of communication for folks that are using the network, but it can be used by anybody. And on that page, we intend to provide data reports, not unlike what you saw in the report for tonight's agenda item. It will show everything from user counts, time online, number of student devices compared to non-student identified devices, websites, categories of websites, and maybe online services accessed. We're also very interested in the distribution of users. We will continue to leverage surveys and also use bandwidth congestion measures just to understand how it's being used, what time of day it's being used, and how we can best move forward with further expansion and investment. So that's largely the points I wanted to cover. And I just wanted to say, I'm so very excited to be involved with this project and very much excited to be representing the County of Marin. This has been a case study on how cities, counties, schools, nonprofits, and private corporations and the partnerships can work to benefit residents. And it's been tremendous. So thank you for your help and support in this.
Well, thank you, Javier. It's great to hear the progress that's been made and the cooperation with the various entities. Major undertaking, I know. So thank you for that. And can't help but comment. I've heard certainly about you, but more directly the comments about Rebecca and the outstanding job she's done. She's been excellent, as I understand, and no surprise to any of us that know Rebecca. So thank you, Rebecca, for stepping up. And Dennis Rodoni, I know, raised some money. I thought the number was 225. It's 335 now. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm certainly hoping, fingers crossed, but maybe more than that, that this is in place by August, because our poor, our children are going to have some real challenges with their education, and this is going to be a very major plus if it's in place, and I'm assuming it will be, because without it, the challenges are amplified. So greatly appreciate all that's been done by you folks and everybody else involved, because it's quite a time we're going through, and I can only imagine for the kids. So thanks for your effort in that regard.
So Mayor, I've got a few more comments before we wrap up.
Sure. Absolutely, go right ahead.
That's okay. I'll be quick. So Javier did mention we have stood up a website at www.canal-wifi.com. It's live now, and that will serve as the landing page where users of the network will first land when they log into the network. And the page has links to COVID-19 information and services. It has a section for students where they can access remote learning resources. So we've designed the website to reflect the time that we're in right now and critical information that we want to make sure we're able to get into the palms of people's hands. We're working closely with Canal Alliance and our other partners on promotional materials to make people aware of the network and how to access that. So you'll see that in the coming weeks. We'll be doing some videos, some text message campaigns, flyers, posters, anything we can to get the word out. And Canal Alliance, again, is a great trusted partner on that. And also in June, we actually conducted a survey. We wanted to better understand the internet access needs in the neighborhood. And the staff report, there's an attachment in there, and it outlines some of the major findings that we found in this survey that we conducted. Thank you also again to Canal Alliance and the schools to help get the survey out. The Canal Alliance helped us do in-person surveys at a couple of the food distributions in the Canal neighborhood. So we had a really great response rate to the survey. And it really shows, again, that there is a very significant disparity in the Canal when it comes to internet and computers and devices. So this Wi-Fi network, again, I want to emphasize, it is a piece to a very big puzzle, and there's still a lot more work that needs to be done to close the digital equity gaps. So we're already having conversations about additional efforts that we should be doing, especially around digital literacy as well. And so to that end, we've also we're continuing this good collaboration that we have between the schools and the county and the city and Canal Alliance. And so we're gonna continue this work. And you can learn more and also donate at donate.canalalliance.org/digital. There's a new digital equity fund established through Canal Alliance, and we will be working closely with them on how we can just continue to close the gaps as we move into a fall semester of more online learning. So with that, I will close the staff report. And if you have any other questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Well, again, thanks for the excellent report, and more importantly, perhaps the substance that is behind it. So thanks once again. Any questions from council members before the community? I see Kate Collins. Your mic is clear.
I have a quick one, and I echo what the mayor said about the teamwork and the collaboration. I mean, how proud we are of you and how incredibly grateful. At the end of the day, it's benefiting our community, and it's been a long time coming, really. It's something we've been talking about, and COVID really kind of pushed it forward, and everyone rose to the occasion, so thank you. My question actually was something that, based on something Javier said, we love data. I mean, we always love data because then it can help you build a better network. Is there security or privacy around the data collection? Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. We're making great efforts to avoid anything that can be considered private information stored or collected. We are focusing mostly on the device type and type of service accessed in a general category sense. So yeah, we want to make sure that trust is a primary component of this network, and so we're taking great pains to avoid anything that would compromise that trust.
So that will be part of the outreach, that people know when they're getting on there, it's not a government entity, taking their information or, anyway.
Yeah, we probably do. Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. I'll have to think about that. Maybe we could do a better job about making sure and communicating that. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's an important point. Seeing no other comments at this moment, we'll turn to public for public comment.
Yeah, we have no callers on the line right now. So if there is anyone who's watching on YouTube and wishes to provide public comments, please write public comment in advance of your message, introduce yourself, and then we'll read that into the record. And I'm going to give everyone about 15 seconds to type their comments in. I see no comments from the public.
Thank you so much. We'll close public and come back for either follow-up question or a motion if you're at that point. Let's start to the report. Would like to provide a motion.
Well, I move that we accept the report.
Thank you.
Second.
And moving second. Roll call, please.
Thank you. And Mayor, if I may, right when I said that there was no public comments, we did receive one. And if it's okay if I just read that quickly.
Please do. Thank you.
How do we make sure we do not overload bandwidth for students? And that was the question.
And we, Javier or Rebecca,
Yeah, I can give it a stab.
Sure,
I think I'm going to interpret that question to mean how do we make sure we have enough bandwidth? How do we not have too much congestion? Is how I'm interpreting that statement. And that's a great question. That's a standard design process for all networks. So at this point, we assume roughly a Zoom session like this. If you go out to zoom.us right now and look at what their bandwidth requirements are, they're roughly about 1.5 meg to 2 megs. And so we're targeting about 2.5 to 3 because we believe that will allow for the best experience for online education. And then we'll have to watch adoption rates. There's, again, as Rebecca mentioned, this is one of many approaches to helping with this. So a lot of students have MiFi cards. Some do have local resources. And so we will be in the mix of services available to them. And as we see that congestion starts to happen, the design allows for a quick turn up of bandwidth. So that's how we will approach it.
And thanks for that, Rebecca. Anything you wish to add? Are there any? Thank you. Are there any other public before we close?
There are no. Thank you.
Okay. In which case we will close the public and come back with regard to this item and a motion to accept the report, which has been offered by Mayor, by Andrew McCullough. Who seconded the report?
Second.
Second. Moved and second. Roll call.
Councilmember Bushy.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cullen.
Aye.
Councilmember Gamblin.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Mayor Phillips.
Aye, matter carries, and thanks again. Excellent report, excellent work leading up to it. So thank you for doing that. We'll now move on to council members' reports, request for future agenda items. Are there any?
Mayor, if I may, Marin Transit. So I represent San Rafael and actually MCCMC on Marin Transit. Haven't been giving updates because our meetings have been going kind of late, but I did just want to share. We had a meeting today, and with the COVID shelter in place, the transit ridership went down. The lowest it's gone down is 80% drop off. It's slowly making its way up to about 50%. A lot of the discussion today, you can go watch the meeting. It's recorded on the Marin Transit website, was a lot about the safety protocol that's going on the buses. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of conversation going on, how to keep both the riders safe and how to keep the bus drivers safe. So that's an ongoing conversation, trying to increase capacity. Right now, the really, really big buses can carry 9 people. And so trying to figure out the logistics of all of that. In response, I'm really proud of Marin Transit. They're being very nimble. They are changing some of their routes. Yellow school bus is not going forward at this point. So they're really reacting to what they're seeing on the landscape, getting ready with some new supplemental routes, and then suspending some other ones temporarily. All the information's on the website. But just wanted to bring that up. We are really appreciative of the CARES money that Marin Transit did receive. Having said that, having less transit riders, there is an impact on the revenue. But I'll continue to update you. But people should know that it's safe to ride the bus, that there really is a lot of protocols in place. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, and thank you for the report. And some similarities with SMART. Ridership is down about 90%. Was 3,000 days, now rounding about 300. The transit is going to be interesting over the next, 6 months, 2 years. How it's going to evolve and address some of the changes that may be taking place. Any other comments or reports? Seeing none, and we have a no successor agency action, and therefore we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Really good job.